from the I Am CEO podcast, and I have an awesome guest back on the show today. I have Christie Lawler. Christie, excited to have you back on.
Thank you so much for having me back.
Yes, I'm excited to talk about all the awesome things that you're doing. And of course, before we jump into that awesome conversation, I want to read a little bit more about Christie so you can hear about phenomenal work that she's been able to do. And Christie is a leading expert in beverage marketing as the founder and owner of CJL Consulting, a beverage marketing agency that houses a nonprofit organization, the WITI Group, and a line of infusion and mixology products, Jab Mixology. She's a public speaker, will be releasing her first book soon, and she's the host of the Lawler Out Loud Mixing Up the Mainstream podcast. Christie serves on the Galaxy Wine Education Foundation Board of Directors and volunteers as a core ambassador. And I'm super excited to have Christie back on the show. She was on episode number 823 of our I Am CEO podcast, and she has numerous accolades. I'm just going to read some of them because there's so many. She's been Innovator of the Year in 2022 by the Bar and Restaurant Expo Industry Excellence Awards, Most Influential Beverage Strategist in 2021, Most Influential Woman in Marketing in Texas in 2021, and so many more. So Christie, excited to have you back on. Are you ready to speak to the I Am CEO community?
Thank you. Yes, let's go.
Let's get it started then. So to kind of kick everything off, I wanted to rewind the clock, hear a little bit more on what you've been working on, what I call your CEO story since we last spoke.
Oh gosh. Well, I'm still doing all the things. Not much has changed there.
There we go.
It's different, right? You just but most excitingly is the WITI Group we've grown significantly, and we are actually having our board meeting call today after I'm done with you to discuss like the scholarship recipients that we're giving awards to this quarter, which is really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love everything you've been able to kind of do with the WITI Group. And I think it was something that when we talked about last time, you had really thought about like how you can, do good and also make an impact at the same time. And you being able to kind of merge those two things together ends up being, sounds like really impactful.
It's just been incredible. We finished our 6th conference in September, and it was our largest one to date, which was incredible. I mean, we're small. We keep it small intentionally because it's very hard for you to build an actual like authentic relationship with someone that you just met if you're in a room of like 1,000 people. Right. If you're in a room of 45 people, it's much easier to actually get to know each person individually. So that's very exciting for us. And the only year we didn't do it was 2020 for obvious reasons.
Yeah, obviously there's a big, huge thing that was happening that changed the entire globe. And I love, what you said about the intimacy, because I was just talking before we popped on this about going to a conference, and when there's, so many people at a conference, but even like, I sometimes have the mentality of like, let me just meet a few really quality and good people. But I think when you have that room end up being that, then I think it really allows you that opportunity to have those deeper connections, relationships, not just at the conference, but I imagine beyond that too.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I love the big shows. I go to all of them, but you're just one person, right? You're like in this whole sea of people, and you're not there to build relationships. You're there to gain knowledge and get the content that they're offering through the show. Right. But this is, it's a very different approach. It's work related, obviously, because that's what we're there to do, right? Is build our professional networks. But my genesis of it was building a friendship that benefits the work relationship. It's been awesome. I love it. And every year, like bringing in the first timers, like they have no idea what to expect because it's so hard to describe it because it's so different than everything else that's available out there. Like even other women's conferences are not like this. Like there's no other adult thing where you're living in a communal environment with total strangers, where you have roommates and bunkmates. Like that's not a thing that grown people do. So it's kind of like throwing it back to that summer camp experience where all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh. And we literally are hosting at a camp. So, yes, there are bunk beds.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And especially because, I feel like I don't know if it's just something that's kind of trending or starting to happen a lot more, but you hear a lot of, words that people use like play, things that you start to do as a kid, because things seem to kind of just flow a lot better. They start to be so natural, and that friendship part that you talked about it becomes somewhat harder when we start to become, adults and start adulting and doing all those things. But I love how that seems to be like a really strong foundation, everything you've been able to build, because I think when you do start to deepen and have those relationships and connections, it's because you have had some type of bond, some shared camaraderie or something along those lines that really starts to, amplify everything that you're kind of going through.
Absolutely. I mean, and honestly, it's a little bit, I don't know where along the way we lose the ability to make an instant friend as we
Mhm.
as we grow into an adult. I don't understand that. And I'm kind of one of those people. I joke that I'm always taking applications for new friends. I mean, it's really simple. Like, we're going to be friends unless you give me a reason not to like you.
You're
So
right.
it's up to you. I mean, I'm cool. We're cool. But if you do something stupid or, shifty, we're not going to be so cool. But this is one of those things where, everybody's on the same page, right? Like, everybody comes with like an open mind. And even if they don't know what to expect, they walk into a room where they maybe know like half the people there, but then when they leave, they know every single person. So, and then you stay connected throughout the year and do different events, that kind of thing. And it's more about building a community and a tribe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you're approaching it from that friendship, and I think so many times we could say it's either or. You could either have friendships, you could do well in business, or you could have friendships. But when you're not figuring out either or is both and better, that's when you're starting to, I think, for one, on a foundational level, tap into that abundance mentality, that abundance mindset. But secondly, obviously, you get those lifelong friends, which sounds to be like truly impactful. So I wanted to rewind a little bit. And so what led you to kind of get started with this? Could you take us through like where this idea kind of came from, and how it was birthed from like everything you were doing related to the marketing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wanted to do something bigger with my company than just be in business, right?
Mm.
It's fine to just, be in business and make a profit, but I wanted to do something that made a positive impact on our industry as a whole. And I came up with the idea of starting a nonprofit focused on building the future female leadership of the food and beverage service industry when I was actually going through trauma therapy. It was after Hurricane Harvey just like totally annihilated our house.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was just like, I was rocked. I'm like, my house has been destroyed. Like, I'm living in this construction zone and it felt like nothing was okay. And I
Mm.
just kind of like, I was dealing with that and I was going through that process of just, like, speaking with the therapist and like getting all of that ugly out of me.
Yeah.
I realized that I could do something with all of that negative energy that I had been experiencing and turn it into something that was really, honestly, selfishly cathartic and healing for me. And then I just started kind of like talking to other friends in the industry about some of the less positive experiences I'd had and kind of came up with the idea of building a nonprofit that focused on creating a space that was a healing space, a loving, supportive space, something that I wished would have been in existence when I could have benefited from it earlier in my career. So that's where it all came from. And then my girlfriend asked me if I wanted to like create an event during Sundance that was like she called it like a girls weekend, but like a crack, like crazy fun. And I was like, okay, I love that idea, but we have to have a purpose. It can't, like, people can't just take a weekend and go to Sundance, and there has to be a reason for it. There
Right.
has to be something related to what we do for a living, right? So she gave me that idea and I just ran with it and created the WITI conference, which turned into this ever evolving animal that it literally just built our mock agenda for next year's program yesterday, sent to our board on today's call. But it's turned into something that has benefited me in so many ways emotionally and through new friendships and new relationships. And it's become a thing that people, we've turned into an adjective. When you describe someone, if you call her witty, she's cool.
Yeah.
Or like, and we have witty men too, obviously. There are quite a few men that support the organization and they're middies,
I love it.
but it's just turned into something that way bigger than I ever thought it could be, which is so awesome for me. Such
Yeah.
a big reward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I say often we forget about that human part of business. And I think when we're able to kind of tap into that, we understand like how much the human part is inside of business and we are also humans. So we have to also make sure that we are, our cup is full and it's filled. And, as we're giving and doing so many awesome things for many other people, that we're also making sure that we're taking care of what we need to take care of. It ends up being so impactful, but it kind of like parallels so much, I think, and I don't know if you feel the same way, where many times when there's like an economic downturn or a crisis or something along those lines, things are not what they were before. And it kind of forces us to reinvent something new. So kind of sounds like just in your life and of course, with everything you experienced with the hurricane, that was like, I don't want to call it a mini because I know it was a huge thing, but it was something that affected you to the point where it seems like you had to kind of redirect and create something new for yourself, but also for so many other people too.
Yeah, it created like a little bit of an epiphany, and it did take us quite a long time. It took us 13 months, I think, to rebuild the house. And we were living in it the entire time. It's just we didn't have access to the front half.
Wow. Yeah. Talk about disruption. Yeah, that's something
Yeah,
else.
yeah, it will rock you. Like my oldest son he wasn't in his own bedroom for most of that time. I think we got him back in his room around 9 months after the hurricane hit. And then of course he'd gotten used to sleeping with his little brother, and to this day they still sleep in the same bed.
Yeah.
They when he moved back into his room and then he upgraded his room, the little one went with him.
There you go. Yeah, it ends up being one of those things that, again, it's very transformational, like when those like life events and catastrophes and things happen that we don't expect. But, I'm a believer that sometimes there is, light, in those things, and we can find those things and kind of lean into them. Then it makes not that things feel better all the time, but just maybe gives it a little bit more of a purpose, like everything you've been able to build and do.
It's a recovery process.
Yeah.
It's as much emotional as it is physical, really, when something really big that just rocks you. And it happens to everybody, right? We all go through those things where we're like, wow, what happened and where do I go from here? Like, how do I come back from this? How do I recover from this? But as long as you can learn something from that, then you can always turn it into a positive.
Yeah, that ends up being huge to be able to do that and even to have that mentality to kind of step into that, literally like as the event happened, like as that thing happened. But as you said, like the recovery was not snap your fingers and then everything's rebuilt. It was a long process that I imagine that you all are still kind of, working through as well too, to be able to kind of get back to, I won't say get back to where you were, to get back to the new normal or whatever that's going to be. Because again, sometimes those opportunities like end up recreating themselves.
Yeah. Well, I did end up treating myself to a kitchen upgrade.
There you go. Hey, there you go. There's always light at the end of the tunnel for that, for sure.
Yeah.
So
now I've got my new office. So I love this.
Yeah, it's very cool. Very beautiful for sure. And for WITI, like when you've been able to do that, how did that help support your already existing business? I know you touched on it a little bit, like that personal aspect. Were there any other like kind of benefits or things that came out of that?
I have not generated any new business or revenue or anything. And not because it's not trying, but that's also not the intention. Right. I wanted to build something that meant something to other people and wasn't about me. Yeah. I don't know. I'm a bad business woman.
No. Well, I think it goes back to, like I said, because I think that, sometimes we can get so caught in like, okay, this initiative has to feed this. It has to, provide this KPI and this, amount of revenue. But again, forgetting about like how we as humans need to be as close to complete full as we need to be, that if we're not that, then that's going to affect the bottom line in the business in of itself, or vice versa. Sometimes is really cool to kind of know that by doing something for ourselves, we're not taking away from the business. We can actually be adding to it, even though we can't kind of drill down and find the exact KPI in which it's affecting.
Yeah. No, honestly, I focus more on providing the KPIs for everyone else, right? Like if you're going to put your trust and your faith in me and give me your time, and on the sponsor side, you're going to give me your dollars to invest in this experience, there needs to be that ROI. So a couple years ago, we started doing little, like we call them micro meetings, but it's pretty much like matchmaking. So when everybody signs up for the conference, we ask everyone, hey, give us the list. These are all the companies that are sending representatives. Who do you realistically see yourself being able to do business with within the next 12 months, right? The conference is every September, and people have asked me to do it twice a year. And I'm like, y'all, that would kill it. Okay. This is not a revenue generator. Twice. But doing the meetings, like having that intention of, I mean, because obviously the sponsors, they want to meet with the like literally everybody, but on the operator side, the buyers, right? Like you can't do business with this particular brand or portfolio, then don't put them on your list. I mean, and I'll match them like as roommates or something. Like if I know, I'll match by personality. I'll match first timers with legacies who have attended every single conference, just so there's that opportunity to like kind of go in those different spaces so that you don't have any strangers and then you still get that ROI for your business. So yeah, funny. I literally get maybe one meeting every year and everybody else has 5.
Nice. Well, it speaks so much, to I don't know if you feel this way, like the servant leadership of doing something, doing well by doing things for other people and having that at the forefront. Because I think so many times we forget, we know what we do. We sometimes can lose sight of why we do it. And you use that word intention a couple times, and I really think that resonated with me because when you have that intention of being able to impact, you know, people's lives, then it also does, kind of pour off on us as well too, or rub off, so that we also do get the benefits of that. But we sometimes can't forget about that why, which is insanely huge.
It's just about creating that space for everybody else, honestly. And it's really like doing the scholarship programs. And, we paid for a woman in 23 to go get her Master of Agave Spirits. And that was awesome. And then we brought her to the conference so that she could kind of like engage with our group and benefit herself through the network further. So that's the kind of thing, like, I really, really, really want to continue that. And I want to bring someone that we're benefiting to the conference every year, because a lot of us fell into this kind of industry, this space within the industry without knowing that our jobs even existed. And then I've been doing this for 20 years, well, on this side of it, but I didn't know this job existed. I didn't know a lot of the jobs that I've had existed before I started on this side of the business. I mean, obviously, I knew the front of house stuff. I knew the back of house stuff. I didn't know that there was an opportunity at the corporate level to the extent that I've built a career around it.
Absolutely.
It's important to share that with like who's coming behind me. I'm not going to be here forever.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's such a huge thing because I often, I feel like the reality of like sometimes what you see or even think about you can be in your life is kind of somewhat in some degree around what you see, what you've heard about, what you see as realistic. So to actually like see like this can be an opportunity to, of course, be able to have that friendship and that community that you've been able to build it. I think it makes it, more of a real thing because you actually know it can happen. You see somebody that's done it. And then you're actually quote unquote rubbing the elbows and connecting with, or bunking, I should say, with the person that might be doing the thing that you ultimately want to do.
Oh yeah. And I mean, we have people like this year, every year, our age is from like 20s to 60s. So you take 4 decades, there's an incredible amount of knowledge, experience, guidance, and different thought processes. And it's not just to benefit the younger group. It's like, it doesn't matter wherever we are in our careers. I always learn something from the people that are much younger than me because they have a completely different existence. They grew up with screens. I didn't. They have a totally different take on everything. And there's so much to learn from that. And it also like keeps you innovating. It keeps you thinking. It keeps you on your toes, really, because you're learning from someone that's so much younger than you. So I think that there's a lot of value there.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you feel like that's part of what I like to call your secret sauce? It could be for yourself, the organization, or the business, or a combination of both. But is it that your ability to recognize that, to kind of see the forest for the trees and see like a 20-year-old can learn from a 60-year-old or vice versa in so many different ways, but you actually hold and create that space for that connection to happen? Do you feel like that's a little bit about what sets you apart and makes you unique?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I was talking to one of my board members when we were on a site visit, and I was like, I think I've realized why no one started something like this before I did. And she's like, because you're insane. And I'm like, so much work. And she's like, yeah, I went to the conference. Like, she's been to 5 of the 6 of them. I was introduced to her right before my second conference. And she's like, even the first couple of conferences, I really didn't understand like what was going on. Like, it was just a lot. It was just so many things happening. She's like, but now I see, and like being a part of it and seeing how much you put into it and what you're creating for everyone else. Yeah, there's a reason no one else has tried to duplicate this, because they realize that there's no way they could tackle it. Like it's just a lot. It's a lot of work. I mean, we were literally driving up the mountain to go to the camp this year, and we pulled into a grocery store parking lot in Napa to grab our groceries and snacks and stuff like that on our way up. And I got a call from the director of the camp that they'd lost power.
Oh no.
And I'm like, that's okay. All right. And she's like, yeah, so lower camp has no power. The generator has not been hooked up yet down there. So don't buy any groceries. We have no way to keep them cold. We have another conference in-house in upper camp. So we'll just have you like kind of, you can stay wherever you want, but you'll be eating with them and everything like that. While we were doing setup, and we were supposed to have power, but this was a Saturday. We were supposed to get power back on Monday. Monday came and went, no power. And people started showing up on Tuesday. And we'd been living in the dark, taking cold showers for 3 days. And we built the entire conference thinking that everything was going to be ready to go. And then Monday at 4:00, we had like all hands on deck. Like the chef had literally moved all of the food for us from the lower camp kitchen to the upper camp. It was insanity. And we were like, okay, here's the thing. Do we pivot? Do we do the conference in upper camp? So their entire staff was like helping us. We moved the entire conference first thing Tuesday morning, and they moved all of our food. They did all of this. We set up everything, literally built the bar. And like, I think about 10 minutes after we finished building the bar, one of the guys from the energy company walks in the door. He's like, we'll have power in 15 minutes. Like, I know. And they look at me and they're like, do you want to move it back down to lower camp? And I was like, no. And I'm looking at the chef, and he is just panic on his face. Like there's nothing but fear in his eye. And he's looking at me, and I'm like, no, if we move this conference, I'm like, one, we don't have time because people will be here within the hour. I'm like, and if we move it, all this work that he's done in this kitchen moves to that kitchen. I'm not putting them through that. Housekeeping has rebuilt all these beds. Like we're not going anywhere. We're pivoting. We're doing it here. And then of course the power came back and people started showing up, and we're like, hi, we have power. Yay. But we didn't even get Wi-Fi back until that night. So like literally the only way we could get a signal or any kind of comms whatsoever, because we were on walkies, like legit. I mean, like I was stressed. Okay. I was stressed. I was drinking a lot of my feelings, but I would literally like drive the rental car up out of the camp, and I'd go sit on these rocks where I could get a signal, and I'd check email, and I'd send out like updates through our app and everything. And I was like, it became a thing. They're like, oh, Christie, do you need to go to rocks? And I was like, yes, I need to go back to rocks. I need a signal. It was like that until like, and then everything was fine. It was great, but oh my God, so stressful. So stressful.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. Yeah, it's so interesting because I always say like, we don't always see the behind the scenes. I say success is much more like a plate of spaghetti than the straight path that we think that it is. And like hearing those things and you sounds like it. Well, I'm curious, like what's going through your mind? I know you said you were stressed. Like, is it just like whatever we can do, we just have to pivot and find a way? Like, what are you thinking about as this is happening?
Literally, there was not really time for thought process. Obviously, I was stressed, and this was not going as planned. The director of the camp was so stressed, and she was like, you could tell, like the way she was breathing, she was stressed. And I was like, I'm not going to fall apart. I'm going to be strong for her. I'm not going to be angry about a situation that's beyond my control. I'm just going to pivot. Right. So we just got it done. And that's what I told her. I was like, honey, we got this. I'm like, trust me. And it was ironic because the camp had lost power in 2023 when we were originally supposed to host it there. PGE was doing this massive infrastructure project in Northern California and cut the power to the camp. And we found out 6 weeks before conference that we had to either cancel, move the dates, or move locations. And I ended up finding a new location 2 weeks later, within 2 weeks, found a new location. And I was like, if we can go through that, we got this. I'm like, at least all of our stuff is here. We can do this. But yeah, I finally broke down Tuesday morning, and as we're moving the entire bar and everything else, and we're moving our stuff out of our rooms and everything, I finally broke down and I gave myself the ability to have some tears, the stress tears. I allowed them to happen. And I was like, okay, that's out of my system. That feels good. I was like, I can't cry in front of her. Okay. If I cry in front of her, she's going to lose her mind. I have to be tough when she's here. So if she's not here right now, I can cry.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that speaks volumes to, just you as a leader to be able to kind of, again, that servant leadership of being able to kind of put other people first and see what you can do to kind of make that happen. But I think also like being able to kind of go through and realize that things aren't, and I'm sure this is like a lot of planning. This is years, probably plus worth of planning that goes into this. But I love too, and I don't know if this might be what I like to call a CEO hack, which is like an app, a book, or a habit, something that makes you more effective and efficient. But like as you're going through those things, I heard you mention that something had happened before. Do you feel like being able to kind of realize like how good you are, how great you are, your superpower, whatever that is, being able to kind of recall on that? Do you feel like that's part of like what can make you more effective and efficient when times like that might happen?
100%. It's the weeble wobble, right?
Yeah.
And you just do. Like, I'm not going to just give up. I'm not going to do nothing with the situation. I'm going to just do everything in my power to fix it. And I always get it done. I have never missed a deadline in my life. I've never missed a deadline. So I don't plan on starting. And these are obviously self-imposed deadlines creating this conference. It's, it's stress that I'm putting on myself, right? So I can't really complain about it because it's completely self-induced. So you act. And I consider myself a realistic optimist. I define my character. I know things are going to go wrong, right? But I also am confident in my ability to problem solve, fix the things that go wrong, and make a plan, make a new plan, make a plan Z, 1A, 3. I don't care. I will figure it out. I get it done. It was funny because when people started coming in, they had this was our first year at this property. So no one had any idea of what had gone on.
Right.
And they were like, oh, wait, the cabin numbers are different. I was like, yeah, it's a funny story, y'all. Like, we're still going to do some content down there. They have power now, but that just happened like 30 minutes ago. So we're doing everything here now. So next year, I'm really excited to move to the lower camp because it's absolutely stunning. But we made it all work. We had to rebuild the spa and everything. We literally set up our spa because this conference includes spa treatments. I fly in spa ladies, the spa squad, to provide spa services to the women during the conference. And they built the spa and then we moved the spa. So it was like everything shifted. But it all worked out. It's just, you do what you.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that speaks volumes to probably and I appreciate you so much in sharing that because I think again, like when people thinking of entrepreneurship and business, you're thinking about all the things going right, checking off all the lists, doing all the things. But you mentioned that phrase, problem solving. That's at the heart of. I always say like most entrepreneurs, CEOs, business owners are like part-time firefighters because there's always going to be something that happens that you have to adjust, pivot, change, completely throw away, plan A through D to get to Z or whatever it might be. It just doesn't go the way you want it to go, but it speaks to your resolve, your resilience, and your ability as a leader to be able to say, hey, we're just going to get it done. And we're going to make this happen at the end of the day. And that is a huge thing I appreciate you sharing so much about.
Yeah, that's what I tell people. Like, entrepreneur life is not for the faint of heart, right? Like, you have to be willing to like get kicked down because that's the only way you learn. Like, I was not an accountant. I was not a web designer. I was not an IT person. I'm doing all of these things now. And it's so much more work than I work way harder now than I ever worked in the corporate world. And I did big things, big jobs. And this is so much more. I mean, it's 24 hours a day. There's no such thing as a day off.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have, vacation days, right? So I can do whatever I want, whenever I want. But also I don't have a vacation day.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I was literally taking phone calls from a pub in Blarney, Ireland last year at like 11 o'clock at night. I was on a Zoom call.
Yeah.
It's the only place I could find Wi-Fi.
There you go. It's the rock, right? It'll always be
here. I'm like, hey, don't judge me. It's 11 o'clock here, but this is what life is. So
Yeah.
if you think you're going to just make a ton of money and not work very hard, this is not the career path for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Would that be your CEO nugget, which is like a word of wisdom or a piece of advice? I usually say it might be somebody you're mentoring, or if you hop into a time machine, you might tell your younger business self is that to really understand the true journey of what entrepreneurship, business, and all being a CEO is encompasses.
100%. And I still don't call myself a CEO.
Nice. What do you call yourself?
Founder and owner.
Founder and owner. Okay.
I have a lot of colleagues that refer to themselves as a CEO when they're a company of one. And I'm like, what are you chief executing officering? You're not a CEO. You
Uh,
have like a much bigger team. You have to actually run all the things and help all the people, in my opinion. So
yeah.
I'm never going to change that title.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that I appreciate you sharing that opinion because that's actually what I was going to ask you. So how would you define that? How would you define like being a CEO in your eyes?
I mean, I see it's executive leadership. It's and whatever form that takes, whatever style of leadership is irrelevant to that. But it's managing multiple teams, divisions, departments, people, whatever. It's being that leader, being that head where, yes, to that regard, I have all of those things, but I feel like the success or the failure lies with me alone.
Mm.
And I feel like that about the conference. I feel like that about everything that I do. If it's going to fail, it's going to fail on my watch. If it's going to succeed, it's going to succeed on my watch. And that to me is the definition of a CEO.
Yeah, absolutely. Having that responsibility and kind of like that, for lack of a better term, ownership of not just the business per se or aspects of the business of the kind of the results of what happens and being fully and tied to that, even if you're doing it or even if somebody in a department or a manager or whatever might be executing on that, you take that ownership. That ends up being a really big thing. And heavy lies the crown, so to speak, the saying says.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Heavy is the head that wears a crown.
Yes.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I'm the king of butchering quotes, so that's my thing. But yes, I thank you for bringing me
That's
there
okay.
because
Just reinvent it and call it yours.
exactly, exactly. Definitely. We just call it a pivot from there. So no, I absolutely appreciate that definition. Of course, I appreciate your time even more. So what I wanted to do now is pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional that you can let our readers and listeners know. And of course, how best people can get a hold of you, find about all the awesome things you and the team are working on.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't have anything to say necessarily. I think you've already given me quite the platform.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course we'll have your links and information in the show notes as well too, so that everybody can follow up. But I definitely appreciate you for everything that you're doing. I think so many times that, we forget about we look at business, it could sometimes be the products and services and things that we're doing, but the impact that we can make on a human standpoint ends up being, I think, the most valuable thing that we can do. So when we tap into that, and of course, you being able to kind of share that, that story, it gives us that idea of like what entrepreneurship truly looks like, because we don't always see those things. So I appreciate you so much and sharing that, being able to execute on that. And of course, coming here with us today. And I hope you have a phenomenal rest of the day.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It was good to chat with you again.
Absolutely.
All right. Have a
All
great
right.
day.